It's midway through the season, so let's grade every AFL team's season thus far. 12 rounds completed, 12 rounds to go. So going in alphabetical order, we're going to start off with the Adelaide Football Club. Adelaide have 6 wins, 6 losses, and they currently sit 9th on the ladder just outside of the top 8. For me, it's definitely an A. Considering the position they were in 2020, going through a full rebuild, Matty Nicks has his young players firing on all cylinders. And I reckon they'll make the finals this year if they keep going on the same trajectory that they are on currently, especially considering their relatively easy run into the finals. Despite perhaps an over-reliance on Taylor Walker still, I am still giving them an A. Next up is Brisbane with 12 wins, 3 losses, who currently sit 4th on the ladder, but they have played a game less than most other clubs in the competition. For me, it's a B+. They've sat top 4 comfortably for pretty much the whole season, but considering the great ins they had over the off-season, the likes of Josh Dunkley, the likes of Jack Gunston, I do expect a bit more than them, especially away from home where they seem to struggle quite a bit. And that begs the question, in a grand final, away from their home ground, obviously played at the MCG, will they be any good? But given the high expectations, I believe a B+ is perfect for them. Next up is Carlton with 4 wins, a draw, 7 losses, and they are currently sitting 14th on the ladder. I bet if you said that to any Carlton fan at the start of the season, even before the season, they would think you're joking 100%. But unfortunately, Blues fans, your season has been a complete and utter failure thus far. I'm giving you an F. And that's the easiest F I'll ever give anyone. The talent on this list is undoubtedly top 4 contention. I mean, look, they've got number 1 draft pick Jacob Wiedering. They've got high-priced recruit Adam Sard. In the midfield, they've got Brownlow winner Paddy Cripps. They've got a top 4 in the Brownlow in 2021 Sam Moss. They've got new signings Chera, Zach Williams, Jack Martin, who's kind of forward, but he can play midfield as well. George Hewitt in the off-season. And you keep moving through the forward line. They've got 2 Coleman winning forwards in Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow, as well as high-priced recruit playing forward and back Mitch McGovern. I mean, all those names listed, the prices they're on, the things they should be doing, it is just not good enough from the players. And unfortunately for Michael Voss, his time at Carlton will be coming to an end relatively soon if their form continues. The higher-ups, they're just not doing good enough. They've had higher-ups leave this season. The club is in turmoil. Things are just going horrifically wrong. No one sees them making the 8, and unfortunately, they get the fail. Completely contrasting Carlton, next is Collingwood with 11 wins, 1 loss, and they sit 1st on the ladder, and they have done for the whole season. Not quite the whole season, but basically the whole season. It's an A+. It just has to be an A+. It's 100% an A+. Considering what they did last year, I was one of the ones who thought they would still make the 8, but drop down a little bit. The only loss was Brisbane away, and Brisbane at home are a formidable side. Fly McRae, as a second-year coach, has worked wonders for that young list. Dacos is in Brownlow contention. Pendlebury is aging like fine wine, as is still side bottom. They will be down by any amount of points in the last quarter, and they will still find a way to win. They have grit, they have resilience, and for a young squad, they seem very experienced in those hard, tough, close games. They seem to be a guarantee for a grand final appearance at this rate. But the only thing I can say about their season is maybe they got to time it a little bit better. Let's all remember in 2018, Richmond were the best team all year, sitting 1st the whole year. They don't make the grand finals. The same in 2019 for Geelong. They don't make the grand final after finishing 1st on the ladder. The same in 2020 and 2021. Brisbane put Adelaide, the best 2 teams all year. It's the only thing I could see is maybe they're not timing it perfectly, but hey, you would take being 1st on the ladder at halfway point of the season. But for Collingwood, the challenge is yet to come. Next is Essendon with 7 wins, 5 losses, and they sit 6th on the ladder. If you told that to a Bombers fan before the start of the season, they would have taken that every day of the week. Given that they have statistically the easiest run for the next 12 rounds and one of the hardest early on, with Brad Scott as the new coach, a young list, but still a talented list. There wasn't much expectation for the Bombers this year, so I'm going to grade them an A. As I said, that list is talented, but it's very raw, and it takes a good coach to get the talent out of them. Given they sit 6th at the moment, they've had a brilliant start to the season. Next up is Fremantle with 6 wins, 5 losses, and they sit 10th on the ladder outside the 8, but they have played a game less than 14 of the other clubs, so let's keep that in hand. However, it is a C for me. They've been underwhelming. They had a horrific start to the season, losing at home to North Melbourne. They have brought it back as of recent with some good wins against Geelong, but for me, as well as a lot of top-class pundits, they had Fremantle breaking into the top 4 this year. With a young midfield and a young list, Brayshaw, Sarong, Darcy, I thought they would improve a lot on last year and break into that top 4, but unfortunately, they look look like they're going to struggle to make the top 8, maybe just creep in if they're lucky. Especially given the acquisition of Luke Jackson, you would expect better. Next is Geelong with 6 wins and 6 losses. The 50-50 record leaves them in 8th on the ladder, just scraping in there. Taking all the injuries they've had into account, it is a D for me. The poor early form has cost them, as now that the injuries have come, they're going to struggle to win more games. Especially losing Cam Guthrie for probably the whole season, that's a horrific loss. From premiers to mid-table, no one expected this drop-off from Geelong. It is just not good enough. Maybe it's a premiership hangover, maybe it's Joel Selwood's loss, who knows. Next is the GWS Giants with 4 wins, 8 losses, and they sit 15th on the ladder. I'm going to give them a B. I think that's probably accurate. It's honestly where I expect them. They've made some improvements on last year. They're a rebuilding team with a new coach and some young players. They still have a lot of quality in that list. You think about Kelly, Cornelio, Whitfield. I mean, there's still great players there. Good wins against Geelong on the way, but also some poor losses as well. Especially this week, round 12, losing to Richmond at home is just not good enough, especially considering the form Richmond have been in recently. Next is Gold Coast with 6 wins and 6 losses, another 50-50 record, which puts them on 11th in the ladder. Gold Coast is also a B for me. It's hard to rate them. They've gone very under the radar, but they've had some really good wins, for example, against the Dogs recently, the Tigers, but they also had some really poor early losses, and that poor early form has led them outside the 8. They have since brought it back, but I've expected a lot more from Gold Coast. Stewie Jew's been coaching enough that I feel like he should be breaking into that 8. They've yet to deliver on any promises, so I think a B is pretty good. Next is Hawthorn, who have got 3 wins, 9 losses, and they sit 3rd last on the ladder, or 16th. If you told a Hawthorn fan that at the start of the season, they would have been actually alright with that. I had them finishing dead last on the ladder in my preseason predictions, so they've exceeded my expectations alongside many others. It's a B+ for me. In context, they had the worst AFL list, they have one of the youngest AFL lists, new coach, some of the higher ups leaving, the new captain, but alas, they've been getting some really good wins. They beat West Coast and North Melbourne, who are the lower teams in the competition, but the win against St Kilda recently was phenomenal, and that's been the high point of their season. And they lost by the Giants by just 2 points. So all in all, in context, it's been a good season, but I'm not going to go any higher than a B+ because the losses they have obtained have been horrific losses. I mean, they have been by massive margins, 80+ points. So that's still a criticism of Sam Mitchell. He needs to know how to stop the bleeding. Next is Melbourne with 8 wins and 4 losses, who sit 3rd on the ladder. Don't be deceived, it's a C for me. That may sound crazy considering they're in the top 4, but have they faced many big challenges this season, and have they conquered them? Losing to top 4 rivals Port Adelaide and as well as the Brisbane Lions, and they haven't even played Collingwood yet. Losses to Fremantle at home, Port Adelaide and Essendon indicate that maybe they just aren't that good, and they barely got over the line against the Suns away. I saw a stats from Jared Waitley that since last year, midway point last year, they're around a 50-50 team, which is just not good enough. I tipped them for the flag this year, but thus far, I'm not confident. Given new signings Brodie Grundy and the already amazingly talented list, I think a C is warranted. Next is North Melbourne, who have gotten 2 wins and 10 losses, and they sit 2nd last on the ladder, or 17th. It's hard to grade them given Clarko is still out indefinitely, but their only wins came at the start of the season. I've already talked about the win against Fremantle away, but sadly for the Roos, reality is hit. They've lost their last 10 matches, I believe, and for that, I'm going to grade them a C+. I believe they deserve the C+. If Clarko had stayed, they maybe would have gotten 1 more win and less horrific losses, so maybe it would be a B+, but I'm sticking with a C+. Next is Port Adelaide with 10 wins, 2 losses, and they sit somehow 2nd on the ladder. Now, I predicted them to finish 1st on the ladder after the home and away season in my preseason prediction, so I know ball, I have got ball knowledge. But I am grading this according to myself and every other football pundit, and pretty much every football pundit had them just outside the top 8 or maybe sneaking in the top 8. They have been brilliant this season. Their only bad loss coming to Adelaide at home, which is why I'm going to give them an A, not an A+, because if they had beaten the Crows, they would have been an A+. Also losing to the Pies, which you expect. But we've seen the evolution of Zach Butters, Connor Rosie, Ken Hinkley, and maybe his final season with Port Adelaide, given that Damien Hardwick is now a free coach. He's actually doing really well. Next is my team, the Richmond Tigers, who have gotten 4 wins, a draw, 7 losses, and they sit 13th on the ladder. If you said that to a Tigers fan at the start of the season, they would not have taken that. It's been a really bad season. We've capitulated, and now we've lost Damien Hardwick. Albeit, as of yesterday, recording on Monday, they got a great win against the Giants away from home. But let's be real, it's been a really bad season for us. It's an E. Instability in the club, young players aren't playing well, the old players look so slow. Now, arguably our best player, Tom Lynch, has been injured for most of the season, so I am taking that into account, so maybe an E is hard harsh, but I am being harsh on my own club. I predicted Richmond to finish top 4, and a lot of pundits predicted them top 8, even top 4. So it's been a fall from grace, a bit like Carlton. Injuries to Gibcus and Tarrant as well in the backline. You know what? Maybe E is way too harsh. Their new recruits, Hopper and Taranto, have performed really well, not as per Kane Collins, but great wins against Geelong, GWS and Adelaide. I think Richmond will finish relatively strong at the end of the season, but I don't see them making the 8. Next are the mighty Saints, St Kilda. They are sitting 5th on the ladder with 7 wins, 4 losses, and let's take into account they still have a game in hand. It's a B+, maybe an A. It's really hard because they started like a house on fire. They've since dropped off with their form. Losing to Hawthorn was really poor. I am going to give them an A. I think they deserve that. If you told a Saints fan they were top 4 for the majority of the season, they would have laughed at you. New coach Ross Lyon is working wonders. They just lost to Collingwood, so they are challenging the bigger teams, but I think the drop-off in form is concerning. Can they make the top 8? I think they still can, but they have definitely exceeded any expectations. Next is Sydney with 5 wins and 6 losses, and they find themselves 12th on the ladder, but once again they have that game in hand. Considering their terrible luck of injuries, I mean the run of injuries, losing Rampy, Paddy and Tom McCutton, all 3 fullbacks in the same week, no team can recover from that. They had no good defenders, and that'll throw anybody's season off. So considering that, I am only going to give them a C, which sounds really harsh, but you just have to take those important injuries into account. But the trend continues when a team gets dominated in a grand final the season after they drop out of the top 8. Sydney look way out of it. I don't think they're going to make the top 8 this year, unfortunately, Swans fans. And hey, I predicted that anyway. Next is West Coast, who find themselves dead last on the ladder with only 1 win and 11 losses. 18th place West Coast, that is just not good enough. However, they have had the most injuries in the competition thus far by quite some way. But I think their coach has just lost it. Adam Simpson looks completely lost. He looks devoid of answers, but it's been a horror show for the Eagles. Considering the injuries, I am going to give them a D, no less. But to be completely honest, I don't see them winning a game for the next 12 rounds. Last up, we have the Western Bulldogs, who have gotten 7 wins, 5 losses, and they find themselves 7th on the ladder, sneaking into the top 8. It is a C+ for me, hindering on a B. Now, their list indicates top 4 quality. Think about the plethora of young forward talent they have. Norton, Ugle-Hagan, Darcy, you can put Josh Bruce in there if you want. And think about their midfield talent. McRae, Bontempelli, Tim English is now one of the best rucks in the competition. Libba, Bailey Smith, that's easily a top 8 list, let alone a top 4 list. So I think they have actually done relatively poor. And if you look at their season in context, it hasn't been that good. The only good win this season has come against Brisbane at home. But they beat Richmond and Fremantle when they were horrifically out of form. And beating teams like Hawthorn, the Giants, and Carlton aren't that hard. Maybe I'm a little bit harsh, but I think the Dogs are just too inconsistent for me. I expect them to be in the 8 with their list, and they're looking like they may be out, maybe in. It's really hard to tell. So I think the C+ is deserved. So that is the final grading for every AFL team. I've got them up on the screen right now. Do you agree with the gradings from all those AFL clubs? I've given you reasons why I've graded them there, from A+ all the way to F. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you would grade your team as well. I'm keen to see what your opinions are. Follow the TikTok, FTFooty with 2 Y's at the end. Hit that like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in another video.